Oh, shrewd storyteller. I'm so happy you look the way you do. You're the kind of survivor I could introduce to my Duskmourn. I'd love to see you stood next to a Razorkin. None of my tales about you are cautionary. I'm just so happy that all the survivors are just like you, and they all convey the same kind of effective mood that you do. No, shrewd storyteller, where are you going? Come back! Oh, sorry. I was having a beautiful dream about a Duskmourn with consistent aesthetics.
Then I woke up.
Today we're going to look at Duskmourn's survivors, and as positive as my first two videos looking through the set's cards were, this one won't be quite so much. For the most part, the things I was worried about in the video I released before Duskmourn came out seemed to play out as I feared. And while the positive elements of the set exceeded my expectations, in lots of ways the survivors had a worse impact on the overall set than I had worried they would. Almost all the art we're going to look at, maybe just all of it even, is obviously good, competent in the way that magic art is. And I'll have positive things to say about each piece, likely. But on the whole, the aesthetic of the survivors really does damage the tone of Duskmourn for me. And I don't like the 80s / Stranger Things-ness of the aesthetic, but ultimately it actually comes more down to the general execution of the aesthetic that I feel harms Duskmourn the most, and I'll try and expand on that as we go. Let's start with Entity Tracker. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human scout, with flash and eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, draw a card. The readings are off the charts! Whatever it is, it's close. So it's blue Enchantress, which is a creature that draws you cards when you play enchantment spells. This is one of the best. It has flash. It's the first one in mono blue, I believe. And Eerie is a slightly better version of Constellation. So it's a very good Enchantress. Well done, Entity Tracker. Flavor-wise, I think this works as the more you quote-unquote map the house by playing more rooms, the more information Entity Tracker gives you. Chrissy Blanescu is a seasoned and extremely talented magic artist, and here the quality of the lighting in the room is expertly executed, which is a phrase I use a lot, but it's very true. The misty quality of the light at the end of the corridor particularly gives us a lot of atmosphere. In terms of the look of the survivor, I feel they kind of encapsulate everything I dislike about the survivors of Duskmourn. Covered in obnoxious, garish tech, looking far too happy even to be chasing this entity. They just don't look afraid, or like they're chasing it down, whatever it is. They're not hiding from it. Their expression doesn't evoke fear whatsoever. And their clothes look brand new. Off ghost hunting in their best outfit picked for stream. Right off the shelves. All that incredible lighting is doing a great job showing us just how brand new this survivor's outfit looks, despite surviving in the house, apparently.
To be fair to Entity Tracker though, it did come with one of those alternate arts where there is a monster in the background. And I think, actually, for Entity Tracker, above any of those cards, this alternate art changes the mood entirely, as now the survivor's expression reads at undermining them, and also the thing that they're chasing on the charts. It's close. It is indeed close. It's right behind you. Excellent. I do like how much this changes the mood of the piece and makes it work a lot better for me. I don't like the tech called the shiny clothes, but the addition of the monster just flips so much of your assumptions about the scene, which is great. Ultimately, though, I think these are the rarer printings of the card, which is fine, but it's cool as a little detail, but I really believe without this, the image doesn't work for me at all. Maybe it does now that I have the knowledge of this thing existing. It's almost like less of a cool bonus and more like you've removed the part of the image that makes the image work, ultimately. Entity Tracker had one of the TV arts, you know what I mean, by Ivan Shavrin. I like the stylized nature, a lot more sort of comic, cartoon-esque proportions on this survivor here. But at least they look like, in some way, afraid, which I'll highlight on any card with the survivors appearing. They look like that, because, you know, they're so few and far between. The style of this card doesn't super speak to me, but, again, she's expressing some sort of fear, which I appreciate. One of the original Enchantresses has actually got a reprint in the commander decks for this set, Mesa Enchantress. And I'm not sure if they are a survivor or a cultist. They could be either, really. To weary wanderers, trapped and lost amid Duskmourn's labyrinthine halls, her gifts are a welcome respite from meals of boiled ear fungus, crickets, and the flood pit's bizarre aquatic creatures. So she very much is dressed like a cultist, but she's offering you a decent meal, which I assume she's
creating using her Disney-style cutlery moving magic? I don't know. I kind of like the idea that she is a cultist rather than a survivor, and that people join the cult for a reason, right? Obviously. So, providing some benefit to weary wanderers, etc., luring them into the clutches of Valgloth's cult, I think is cooler than this lady just being a survivor, which is fine, but not very interesting. Moon-blessed cleric also falls along similar lines. A reprint from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, now Duskmournified. It's 2 and a white for a 3/2 human elf cleric. When Moon-blessed cleric enters, you may search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top. Sometimes we must make our own path through the darkness. Although this cleric does appear to more likely be a survivor than the previous one. Their clothes aren't mothy. They're carrying signature survivor tech, and they have a flitting glimmer to the left of them. I do very much like the environment of this scene. This ominous door within a larger frame. I like the quality of the light on the wet ground. It's nice. I think this might be the first half-elf we have explicitly in the magic canon, I believe. All the other ones have been in D&D sets. So Duskmourn has half-elves, which is cool. I mean, I guess other planes might, but we don't see them. I should have explicitly said half-elf card, shouldn't I? I'm sure there's like some Edgegate's half-elf character from pre-revisionist history or something. Stalked Researcher, 1 and a blue for a 3/3 human wizard. It's got Defender and Eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room. Stalked Researcher can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. Just a shadow. It's only a shadow. Please let it be a shadow. Lovely Flavour translation. The Defender is representing your Stalked Researcher's fear. And only when you have full knowledge of the room can the stalked researcher overcome their fear enough to attack. Thank God, a survivor that actually looks like they're in some kind of danger. I'm astounded. And I don't like the tech, but Martin Nail's art here is gorgeous in depicting a survivor that's actually on the back foot, finally. This ominous, eerie illumination looks like we might potentially be in the flood pits with the quality of the mist and potential water/energy on the ceiling, the uncertain nature of the surrounding colours and how they envelop this survivor adds to the fear she evokes. I still feel her clothes look not worn enough. It's just every survivor we see, their clothes look off the rack, and as I find, that ends up being one of the biggest problems at all. Gremlin Tamer, white and a blue for a 2/2 human scout. Eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token. Do they cause trouble? Sure. But if you're nice to them, the trouble happens to other folks. She's got 80s movie girl hair. She looks like the popular girl in media of the time has been transported to Duskmourn and put on their hacky outfits. She so perfectly exactly looks like that character, sans the outfit of just the 80s popular girl. That, I do indeed have to praise Billy Christian's art for that quality. He did nail that aesthetic to her perfectly. I still don't like that aesthetic. I like that this card is at least demonstrating the chaotic nature of gremlins and that they can actually be a help to survivors occasionally, because they're just so chaotic. It's a fun little filmic moment, I suppose, as we have this close-up angle on these two characters before she decides how to deal with the next room. The lens flare sort of highlighting the artificiality of this cinematic reference. More a sort of general reference than a specific one. I like her design a lot. She's just another one of the ones that are far too clean. Far too clean. The excellent lighting by all these artists just demonstrates to show how clean everyone's clothes are. But ultimately, that cleanliness is far more jarring than the 80s-ness of the clothes. It's making me imagine these still existing clothing brands that are somehow operating on Duskmourn despite the conditions. Or maybe maybe the survivors just got a bunch of incredibly impeccable tailors who are flush with new fucking materials to work with. God, all that fabric not stained by blood or dust as you think it might be in a fucking mansion run by a moth. I don't understand why the survivors aren't grubbier. Paranormal Analyst, 1 and a blue for a 1/3 human detective. Whenever you manifest dread, put a card you put into your graveyard this way into your hand. If I've done this right, it should immobilize all spirits in the area. If I've done this wrong, you know what? Let's just hope I did it right. It's a good card in that it's kind of drawing you cards every time you manifest dread, essentially. And I suppose your analyst is giving you a greater understanding of those cards, the dead, I suppose, as they come into your hand rather than the bin. James Ryman is displaying some effective lighting abilities, but again, they unfortunately serve to just show how impeccably dressed this survivor is. Look at these brand new clothes. Look at his carefree expression, despite being surrounded by ghosts. Maybe they're immobilized, I suppose. Which again is fun flavor text, doesn't really evoke the mechanics. But he's come out of the dressing room. Impeccable makeup and hair, impeccable attire. He's a character. I just don't believe him. And ultimately, it does seem that it is this cleanliness that you see evoked across almost all the survivors. Far, far too many. Where it isn't so much the style of the clothes that's the issue, that feels the most out of place. It's the fact that they don't look like they exist within the environment. They're described as scrabbling to survive, depicted as prey in almost all descriptions of them on non-survivor cards and in the guide and the story. In a way that you think might some way be represented upon the clothes they wear, at least have them be a bit bedraggled. It's weird how it feels like it wasn't a feature of the style guide, or maybe the opposite even, that they just told people to dress survivors in clean clothes for some reason. It's just very strange. As a possible explanation for the newness of everyone's costumes, the stories do note how the house creates lures. It renews the prize of various lures, as the survivors describe it. Objects of desire, basically. I think they're talking about jars of jam, ultimately, in the actual story. But you could theorize that more useful things could come out of these lures and be utilized by survivors. I suppose it's not really explicitly stated, nor really even hinted at beyond the mention of the existence of lures. But that does exist as a potential explanation, even if there is a justification for the clothes, they still damage the aesthetic. Cautious Survivor is one of the only characters that actually breaks this rule. 3 and a green for a 4/4 elf survivor with survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Cautious Survivor is tapped, you gain 2 life. She came back alone, with her recorder broken and its footage scrambled. Whatever she had experienced, she never spoke of again. So I think the idea of Cautious Survivor is just using the survival ability and you gaining life to create the idea of them just benefiting from having survived by being cautious. Although I suppose the process of that was mentally scarring. I just like Jodie Muir's design. Well, I like elements of its design. She's grubby. She does look like she's been doing something to survive. Thank God, finally. And her clothes read a little bit more practically than some of the other survivors' designs. And at least they're not brand new off the shelf. That I very much appreciate, and it makes her feel a lot more part of the world than many other survivors do. Even with her pink hair, which I'm not a fan of the survivors' dyed hair. It's fine, I get that can be a thing of Duskmourn. It worked great on Kylim, the plane the battle bond takes place on, because the people there would dye their hair to be seen in the arena. This is just here because it's an 80s thing. And as much as I love the design of Cautious Survivor for being grubby and a bit nervous looking, she does have one of the most obnoxious looking bits of tech that we've seen. All hard edges, all splaying out. Combined with the backpack, it reads very much like a proton pack from Ghostbusters. But it looks like a delicate, complicated bit of tech, which in itself doesn't really pair with the expression and the rest of the survivor's haggard tone. How are you maintaining these things? Rip Spawn Hunter, 2 and a green and a white for a legendary human survivor. It's a 4/4. It's got survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Rip Spawn Hunter is tapped, reveal the top X cards of your library where X is its power. Put any number of creature and or vehicle cards with different powers from among them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I don't know quite what the flavor is. Maybe, I suppose the idea of their survival ability is that they're an inspiring figure to rally behind. A very capable survivor indeed, and that gives them the ability to rally other creatures from your graveyard / find you an escape vehicle? I'm not quite sure. Rip, I don't really have a problem being presented as capable, as that's sort of the entire construction of their character. And in isolation, it wouldn't hurt as much as with some of the other characters. I'm not quite sure if they've collected the things in these jars. It's hard to determine what is in that one in the foreground, or whether they're just passing through here. I don't think it's a direct reference, but I get a sense of the Marines in Alien from this character. Aliens, even. And they've got the biggest fake proton pack that we've seen. At least one of those screens will fry you, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, if any character's going to be lugging around a bit of obnoxious tech, it makes sense for it to be this one. I still don't like the tech. It just all feels so fake. It's just been made for the scene. Like, no one has made any decision about what different parts of this thing are doing. Not that they have to, but it's just so clear that they haven't. It's just a collection of 80s-looking tech shapes mashed together, and that produces lightning, because we said. Defiant Survivor, 2 and a green for a 3/2 human survivor. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Defiant Survivor is tapped, manifest dread. The dark should be scared of me. I don't quite understand this mechanically. Unless your opponent is the dark and you're manifesting their dread, maybe. Yeah, it does seem like manifest dread on a lot of cards has been used to represent the perspective of the player reading the card rather than the opponent you're affecting. So it's a little odd. I suppose that's not a flat rule, is it? Do what you want, Defiant Survivor. Jessica Fong's art is expertly done here. Nothing to critique about its execution, just I hate the style. Actually, I do think having the background be the exact same green as the tech of the survivors was a bit of a silly choice, in my opinion. It does cause the image to sort of bleed together. She looks clean, she's got tech, she is in no way in danger. I know she's called Defiant Survivor, or they are anyway, so we don't know. The card is intended to be defiant in some way. But in this case, they're not even really overcoming anything. It's just their expression that is defiance, and I suppose the environment in the background is giving them this sort of star-shaped aura with the door. But there's so much of this energy in the set, and I don't need more of it, and this is just an example of it. Again, but where that is the only appeal the card offers is just, here's all the things you don't like about survivors. Cryptid Inspector, 2 and a green for a 2/3 elf warrior. Vigilance. Whenever a face-down permanent you control enters and whenever Cryptid Inspector or another permanent you control is turned face up, put a +1 counter on Cryptid Inspector. Please be dead, please be dead, please be dead. I suppose the inspecting is your elf becoming more powerful for having witnessed cryptids in the process of transformation, or becoming tangible after being manifested as dread. With the +1 counters representing your inspector's growing power through understanding. I think this is actually quite a good Flavour translation through simplicity. Again, it's a thing that cares about your creatures, and the art makes it seem more about you be doing something with dead opponents' creatures, but it's fine. I suppose the real truth is this creature from the Black Lagoon in the foreground isn't dead. Let's poke him with our desk lamp. I don't have a clue what that is supposed to be or do. It's just a desk lamp that electrocutes close by enemies. I'm asking too much of Duskmourn's tech to explain itself further than that, to be honest. I like the pose. I think this sells the emotion of the character. I like that they're a bit on the back foot, unlike lots of other survivors. I think the lighting behind them creates a bit too much triumph, in my opinion, and safety implied by this door they could disappear through after the fact, this sort of being ethereally lit. But the expression is good, and the art pairs well with the flavor text, which I like. Cynical Loner. The only black creature with survival. Cynical Loner, 1 and a black for a 3/1 human survivor. It can't be blocked by Glimmers. Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Cynical Loner is tapped, you may search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm done with hope. Well, that's quite cool graveyard tutor. I do like that. The survival ability mimics Cynical Loner getting the job done on their own. You tap them and then they'll find a card you need and put it in the bin, I suppose. I'm not quite sure what the bin flavor is there, but either way, it's not a bad card. This sort of emo goth girl works well at being a Cynical Loner in a set which has costumes that look like this. I think her design evokes the idea well. And I think it's a good idea. The idea of her character is framed around her feelings in a way. I think centering her face relatively close with lots of visible detail, with a clear view of her expression and how she's feeling was a smart idea. I'm not sure how she's been burned by Glimmers in the past. They seem to sort of be pretty helpful. So I'm not sure why she's slagging off all the Glimmers, but who knows. What is the fucking tech on her arm doing, though? I hate this tech so much. I think it's worse than the Thunder Junction gun designs, which, I don't know, they're pretty close to each other in terms of how bad they are. The problem is the Thunder Junction sucked. And I don't care about the bad guns in that set, because the plane sucks, and everything about it feels cheap and rubbish. Duskmourn I like, generally. It just has elements that are horrifically garish compared to the rest. Like this obnoxious tech. What does the fucking handle do? I'll tell you what it does. It damages our enjoyment of the set. Anyway, again with Cynical Loner though, she's got a perfect face of makeup and some very kempt clothes. Let's jump slightly ahead to talk about Winter, because I wanted to make a point about the tech. Winter Misanthropic Guide, this card that's in the Duskmourn set rather than the Commander, the other Winter, doesn't quite make this point as they're holding a knife in the art, although they do have one of those obnoxious reader things on their belt. Winter Misanthropic Guide costs 1, a black, a red, and a green for a 3/4 human warlock. It's got wards 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. Delirium as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards. In your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types. The kind of group hug I enjoy, where it comes with a downside as well. A fun card, and I've played against it, and it was fun to play against, except that it was paired with, by accident, another deck that was hitting people when they drew cards Nekasar style, so that was painful. I like delirium here being used to demonstrate Winter's mastery over the house, and also his traitorous nature in the story in regards to the Planeswalker characters. I mean, ex-Planeswalker characters, etc. Winter provides a benefit for everyone, helping them, giving them information on the house and guiding them through the house, but only he has the aptitude to withstand the malevolence of the house, so he's not necessarily as interested in protecting you from it as you might have assumed. It's good flavor, and I don't even dislike Winter's design. It's a striking character design that I think mostly works for the most part. It's just described cooler in the story, where the elements of his clothes are described as being made of bits of the house, like wallpaper, etc. And it doubles up as both as the implication that it can be used to camouflage Winter, and also that it's been reconstructed over time from elements of the house. Here again, Winter's just picked his outfit right out of the wardrobe. I feel like there's nothing wrong about the two arm chokers, but shouldn't the survivors' outfits be designed around practicality? I do quite like Winter's semi-androgynous design. It's just, it doesn't evoke surviving. Anyway, I do enjoy the different lighting tones in the area, with the eeriest being at the top of the stairs, where and the light shining across the knife and Winter's face sort of gives the impression that he's going to lead us towards this spookier area. I like it. Winter, cynical opportunist, is 2 and a black and a green for a 2/5 human warlock with death touch. Whenever Winter attacks, mill 3 cards. Delirium, at the beginning of your end step, you may exile any number of cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types among them. If you do, put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. I like the description cynical opportunist for Winter, and I think that actually perfectly describes his outlook in the story, which is fun. Those weapons are pretty powerful, I guess, thus the death touch. I guess it's just sort of a card that's focused around delirium, enabling delirium, and utilizing your graveyard. Maybe Winter is like guiding these permanents out of the bin. I suppose, regardless, the flavor of using delirium to represent aptitude within the house, I think works quite well. I'm not quite sure what Winter's relationship is to these salvaged permanents, unless that's intended to be why in this art he's got his hands on some cool tech, essentially, is these, because it is any permanent that he can return from your graveyard/exile. A delirium effect that eats your delirium, I suppose. The low angle is very well executed here. I like the cavernousness of the implied background. And it serves to, everything serves to make Winter look very imposing and dramatic. I still wish the clothes looked like they did in the story. That would be great. But in all honesty, I cannot stand this tech, these props. And this is a general criticism for all of the tech in the set. I feel like these are amongst the worst, unfortunately, on this art. They don't even look like 80s movie props. They look like modern video games or toys, like Nerf guns or something. They don't actually look like the things that they're sort of trying to reference. I don't feel like they actually do a good job of evoking the 80s and 70s movie tech that they're parroting. They're just over-designed. And the neon just makes them look too modern, and then they also they don't look in any way easy to construct. Whereas in the story, they're described as being constructed from parts, like glass from jars and wires from melted cutlery, etc., which in no way resembles what these look like at all. How are the survivors manufacturing these themselves with the supposedly limited resources they have? And if not, then if these are appearing out of lures, or maybe some of them, people just had them on them when they came through worlds, maybe, but then why is there such an abundance of them everywhere? And if they came from lures, why is Valkov making such cool shit just to dish out to the survivors? Ironically, had it looked more 80s and 70s, it would have looked better. Yeah, the sort of ragtag thrown together tech of lots of movies from that era would have actually worked far better here. And some of the tech in the set sort of approaches that idea, but it's all just too over-designed. And even for the simple designs, the green neon adds this modernity to it. I look at those images and I see characters holding props. I don't see people holding weapons. It doesn't happen. Anyway, even from the material that Wizards have published about their intent for Duskmourn, etc., there doesn't really seem to be any logic to the tech outside of, we want to reference popular culture. Like, it just explicitly says that, like, reference popular culture as much as possible, because it's horror and players will like horror references. We just have proton pack things because Ghostbusters exists. Remember Ghostbusters. And that's actually the explicit intent, as if that's purpose enough for the design of the weapons of your world that you're creating. I haven't had an issue with referencing Ghostbusters, but at least do it with a point. It isn't a point in of itself. Ghostbusters. Remember that? Ooh, I think Josu Hanese has skirted many of my common criticisms of this set, I think. Let's zoom in on this guy's shirt. Oi, clean shirt. Oh, he's not a clean shirt. I can see some dust, etc. highlighted on his clothes. I'm elated. Unwilling Vessel, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 human wizard. It's got vigilance. It's got eerie whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a possession counter on Unwilling Vessel. When Unwilling Vessel dies, create an XX blue spirit creature token with flying, where X is the number of counters on Unwilling Vessel. Can't be too vigilant if you got possessed, right? But then maybe the vigilance also represents their own response to fear, which is panic and action. It seems that the power of this spirit grows as they traverse the house, though. I'm not entirely sure why, but I do like that the mechanics of this card create a little story. Josu Hanese hitting it out of the park with one of my favourite depictions of a survivor and a glitch ghost in the set. Together. The glitching effect is gorgeously executed here, and I love how it mirrors the direction of the survivor as the spirit mimics their pose in this creepy embrace. And we have a survivor in some kind of peril on a card that's good, mechanically, and its power isn't hurt by the fact that it's in peril anyway. Wow! Look, it is possible! I quite like the lines of the room and the curtain sort of opposing that of the ghost as well. Oh, and the subtle blue of the ghost in the survivor's mouth as they scream. There's loads to love about this image. Even the tech looks way more pared back and how I want it to look in the other art. The green lightning is well executed here, and I think I prefer that to an abundance of neon strips. But I do feel like this neon green, it just, on all the images that it's in, it kind of adds this artificial nature to the images, I feel. But this tech is far better than the majority of most of the tech in the set. Tunnel Surveyor, 2 and a blue for a 2/2. Human Detective. When Tunnel Surveyor enters, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. Though he needed to know what lay beyond the intersection, Harp couldn't suppress a shiver of disquiet as his glimmer disappeared into the darkness ahead. Glimmers are like reverse cellar spawn that occasionally manifest from survivors, representing positive emotions that might help them survive in the house. We can talk more about them later in this video. For now, we have another card, the art and flavour of which elicits some kind of peril for our survivor, which I do appreciate. And John Stanko's art here does walk a good line, I feel, for presenting our survivor experiencing the dawning of dread. The corridor itself doesn't look as short as their pose is implying, but the lighting is otherwise expertly executed, my catchphrase for this series. And a survivor that elicits some kind of fear. I like it. Even with a big glowing teddy bear, the tone of Duskmourn is more maintained than on the majority of them. Another legendary survivor. Let's talk about Toby, Beastie Befriender. 2 and a white for a legendary human wizard. That's a 1/1. When Toby, Beastie Befriender enters, create a 4/4 white beast creature token with this creature can't attack or block alone. As long as you control 4 or more creature tokens you control have flying. Sure, I'm pretty small, but Gribble isn't, so I don't get scared. The Beastie token not being able to attack or block alone, I think does a good job of creating the flavour of it being a protector. Actually, I think to feel the most like a protector, it should not be able to attack alone, but should be able to block alone fine in order to get in the way of Toby, basically. I guess the sort of flitting glimmers of feathers is supposed to represent Toby's glimmer manifestations granting flying to the Beastie, I suppose. Aaron Miller did Toby's Beastie token as well, which I like that looks very much like his one from the art. Very cute. Toby riding on his back. Aaron Miller, I love Aaron Miller's Beastie illustrations. This and the other one. I think the Artful Command Tower also references these guys, where they have a camp set up. It's me and Gribble's special fort. None of the bad things can get us in there. I actually love Eddie Mendoza's art for this command tower as well. So mysterious. What beautifully mysterious fog. I do like the sort of children's TV-esque quality of the Beastie in this one. It does work, balanced against the creepy masks. I like the idea of the card, and I think the flavour is evoked really well with the mechanics, for the most part. But I don't have any inherent problem with Toby. I like the idea of a kid, survivor in Duskmourn, who has a Beastie friend. That's a lot of fun. And obviously kids are more vulnerable, so they're easy to root for in horror stuff. But I hate his clothes. Polo shirt and shorts. Again, pristine. It's pristine. Look at his white, untouched collar. Especially with the way Toby's set up. It's like he's like living in a little fort with his friend Gribble, seemingly alone. Is he washing his clothes? Anyway, I mean, maybe they are. Like, you can say that if you want. I feel that damages the fiction of Duskmourn a lot. I imagine the survivors that lived in the type of safe zones that may no longer exist since Valgavoth has changed his mind since the desparkening. But in those safe zones that may or may not still exist, I bet people wash their clothes. But I don't think they come out looking like this anyway when they do. But I like that Toby being a child does inherently invite some idea of peril. Popular egotist. 2 and a black for a 3/2 human rogue. You can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice another creature or enchantment as an activated ability. And popular egotist gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I know you'd want me to live, bestie. Letting you sacrifice another creature to give this indestructible is very flavorful for what this card is trying to evoke. And I suppose continually giving you life and making your opponent lose life for continued sacrifices works with the very selfish nature of this card. We can see 2 people with similar outfits as our egotist pushes her former bestie into the arms of these cellar spawn encroaching.
Oh, I mean, Razorkin.
I like the use of light here to draw the edges of the environment and also of safety in a way, as it illuminates the smug expression of our egotist and the demise of her friend as she's about to fall into the shadows. I think their clothes look a bit grubbier, which I appreciate, and they're also more muted color-wise, which I appreciate. Root-wise survivor, 3 and a green for a 3/4 human survivor with haste. Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if root-wise survivor is tapped, put 3+1 counters on up to 1 target land you control. That land becomes a 0/0 elemental creature in addition to its other types. It gains haste until your next turn. Why does it gain haste if it's getting it in your second main phase? So you can still tap it for mana? I guess it's just so you can still tap the land while it's a creature. Anyway, I'm more of a fan of effects that make lands temporarily into creatures personally. But this isn't a bad card at all. It'll make you a bunch of 3/3s. A survivalist has turned up on Duskmourn, it seems, with the ability to animate the land. Whoa! I do actually really like his design. It feels both 80s-esque and setting appropriate. Look, he's got a tear in his jeans. He's missing a shirt. He's just got could be a curtain, like a house feature wrapped around him. But look at the story implied by his clothes, rather than what brand is it? He doesn't necessarily look like he's animating the tree. He could be. It's not saying he isn't doing that. It's just that effect is being... Or maybe this card was potentially designed to do something vague with lands, maybe, and then has now crystallized into this. Effective lighting, with the magic from his hand shining across his face. And I like that he's recognizing the gravity of the situation of Duskmourn, both in his clothes and his pose, while still looking imposing and dramatic. Overgrown Zealot perhaps should have been in the last video, as I believe he is about to become a monster, but he's still an elf for now, so we'll put him here. 1 and a green for a 0/4 elf druid. With tap, add 1 mana of any colour, and tap, add 2 mana of any 1 colour. Spend this mana only to turn permanents face up. Even as the roots twisted painfully into his flesh, he sang out in joy, for he could feel himself becoming one with the woods. This very much looks like the creation of a Wickerfolk, does it not? It does, actually. I also like the idea that even after the house has arisen, some people still turn to the prospect of becoming a Wickerfolk, which I think they would, because the promise of living without fear is probably even more tantalizing if you live in Duskmourn. And also elves in Magic are typically wood elves. They're often associated with, almost always associated with green, basically. And the elves of Duskmourn were laid out in the story as being particularly nature-loving, living amongst the trees, etc., and viewing city as an abomination. I like the idea of elves being trapped within the artifice of Duskmourn, just longing to return to nature in some way. Diversion Specialist. 3 and a red for a human warrior. It's a 4/3. It's got menace. You can pay 1 and sacrifice another creature or enchantment as an activated ability and exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. Hey, Fang Faces! Over here! The flavour of you sacrificing a creature or enchantment for the card to provide you an opportunity, I think, works quite well as a diversion specialist. Also, I think that also works with the flavour of it needing 2 creatures to block it, because 1, it can just effectively evade. Mechanically, great flavour. I do feel like the more neon 80s style lighting was handled well in this image in a way that doesn't feel quite so obnoxious as in others. Even the green of the tech is kind of being drowned out in the rest of the room's lighting, and I actually think that worked quite well. The environment does look great, including the window/hole to non-existence in the left of the background, and the ominous stairway to the right. Just another dramatic, capable survivor. Dashing Bloodsucker, 3 and a black for a 2/5 vampire warrior. Eerie, whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, Dashing Bloodsucker gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn. There are worse things here than vampires. Duskmourn's Blade is winking at us. Thanks, Blade. He's even brought his own sonic screwdriver / digivice, I suppose. I like this art a lot. It's a very fun pose. The pink 80s lighting sells that even more. And I can see this scene as this character appears in the movie right after saving the survivors from death or whatever, after they'd been avoiding him. And in that isolation, I think this scene would be really fun to have in the set if it wasn't such a case that so many of the survivors give us the same kind of feeling as don't worry, it's all covered. We got this. It's just too common. As much as I do indeed like this, and if we were to trim out lots of them that are too capable, this would definitely be one I would leave behind. In the set, I mean. I suppose the flavour with Dashing Bloodsucker is that he's helping you traverse the rooms as he's getting buffed for each one you unlock. And it's lifelink, which is a helpful thing. Hardened Escort, 2 and a white for a 2/4 human soldier. Whenever Hardened Escort attacks, another target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. It's not magic. I read the writing on the house's walls. I listen to its sighs. I smell the changes in its air. It tells me where the danger lies. An escort giving another creature you control indestructible when it attacks is very flavorful. Oh, excellent art by John Stanko. Again, maintaining the horror tone of Duskmourn. They're grubby. They've even got blood on them. I'm aghast. And their tech even appears to be a robot arm, which I appreciate because we know what it's doing for her then, at least. She looks seasoned and wizened in her expression, which evokes the danger of the place, whilst also presenting her as capable in a way that doesn't break the tone. It's fantastic. Perhaps the Haunted Woods could look ever so slightly more surreal, but I do indeed like the tone they create for the image anyway, and given how well the survivor is presented, and she's the focus. Who cares? Honestly, it's just a great image. Phenomenon Investigators. 2, a blue and a black for a 3/4 human detective. As it enters, choose Believe or Doubt. Believe, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 2/2 black horror enchantment creature token. Doubt, at the beginning of your end step, you may return a non-land permanent you own to your hand. If you do, draw a card. This is a very cool card mechanically. I like how it mimics how the Siege cards work from Khans and a few other times. If you have belief, then you can see the manifested afterlife of your creatures. Or perhaps that belief just represents the Cellar Spawn preying off of your fear. Doubt? I'm not quite sure of the flavour of it. You're denying the existence of your non-land permanent in favour of new evidence that you then produce? I don't know. Or your non-land permanent is going home with its research? I really don't. I'm not quite sure. Either way, I do feel the card feels flavourful regardless. And in the art, we have 2 survivors admiring some sort of chest while a gathered and varied group of monsters all hide behind them, their pink eyes elucidating the danger that the survivors have yet to realise. The composition of the image is very good. I think the pink is a bit too striking, potentially, and maybe draws focus away. And the survivors do a good job evoking the hamminess of the idea in their costumes. But their outfits are so clean. His is literally plastically reflecting the light. There's nary a thread, nor a scratch, nor a drop of anything, or a speck of anything on either of them. Obviously their lack of fear in comparison to the monsters is intentional this time, and works for their obliviousness. But they just look like fake people. Yeah, another thing that Phenomenon Investigators highlights to me that a lot of cards have is they just look like they were designed to look like movie stars. They don't look like regular people. They look like Hollywood actors, 9 times out of 10. Almost 10 times out of 10. I understand it's being done with some sort of point, but the point is to reference the artificiality of another form of media. And that's just kind of Duskmourn down to a T. Just another point on the list of things which damage immersion in playing. I feel like these guys are a little bit of a reference to Mulder and Scully. We got a dude
and a lady, and they're phenomenon investigators, and their mechanics are believing and doubting. You know, that feels like very much like those guys. So maybe play up more of a visual reference to them. Come on, this set's a little referential, right? I get that's, you know, X-Files is a little bit later than this, but having these guys be more explicitly Mulder and Scully in their art would have worked better for me. Also, because Mulder and Scully's outfits were less plastic.
Glimmer Seeker is 2 and a white for a 3/3 human survivor with survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Glimmer Seeker is tapped, draw a card. If you control a Glimmer creature. If you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. Well, hello there. Want to come exploring? It's card draw in white. We've got some more of it. It's not a bad card, making you glimmers and drawing you cards. And I suppose once your Glimmer is accompanying your Glimmer Seeker while they explore, you're drawing more cards. I like that this scene actually features some kind of peril, even though the survivor is triumphant in it, as these tendrils reach out from the darkness of the mist moors where it appears they are. Oh, and actually the cloth of the mist moors is just wrapping and reaching towards her. I love that detail. This appears like a chance encounter, which I think is how the Glimmers work generally. But it almost looks like she's gone into this particularly perilous bit of environment to get the key. Like this is like an Indiana Jones-esque moment of retrieval, which doesn't quite gel with the chance encounter thing. But it still creates a good story, regardless. And peril is maintained, which I appreciate. And the lovely painterly lighting sells her moment of triumph as it illuminates the darkness. Veteran Survivor, 1 white for a 2/1 human survivor. Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Veteran Survivor is tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. As long as there are 3 or more cards exiled with Veteran Survivor, it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. I like that it becomes more of a veteran as it goes, which is fun. I'm not quite sure what the flavor of exiling cards from graveyards is. Maybe it's like making the Veteran Survivor knows to make sure things are dead, I suppose. That's not really invoked in this flavor, but you know, in the card. But the art sells the idea of the survivor and the scene really well, as our survivor chuckles in the foreground. And in the background we can see this fight that played out, I suppose, with the chandelier still swinging back and forth, this axe embedded in the mirror, and this collapsed suit of armor, which we presume was not motionless before this image. I'm guessing he just had a fight with an animated suit of armor, which is a very horror-y trope thing, I suppose, but just another survivor shrugging off Duskmourn's problems. It's also a bit strange that you don't really see any animated suits of armor in the rest of the set. There might be. Maybe I'll point them out if we see any more, but I don't remember seeing any other ones. Star Athlete, 1 and a red for a human warrior. That's a 3/2 with menace. Whenever Star Athlete attacks, choose up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller may sacrifice it. If they don't, Star Athlete deals 5 damage to that player and has blitz for 3 and a red, so you can cast this spell for its blitz cost. And if you do it, gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next instant. Yeah, I don't really see how those abilities translate to this athlete, who's lugging a statue head around like a American football, I guess. I don't really get this flavor. Someone explain this to me, I'm not quite sure. I suppose it makes your opponent make a choice? Like, are they choosing to... But I don't know, I'm not quite sure. Maybe the choice thing feels sports-esque, potentially. I don't quite sure the flavor I don't understand the flavor of this card otherwise. Our star athlete is being chased by gremlins as he employs all of his football techniques. I don't know. The gremlin's expressions are fun. He's got raggedy clothes, which I actually do appreciate looking at him now. He looks like his trousers are coming apart, etc. Appreciated. There's hemming on his jacket. Very much appreciated indeed. But, like, did he come from somewhere that had American football, that played American football? I guess you would think the implication being Duskmourn being the 80s Americana plane would be the place where American football takes place, but I think the original generation even might be all dead on Duskmourn, so it's like, he ain't playing no football on Duskmourn before Duskmourn, he must be from somewhere else, which does make things even more confusing, especially on some other cards. We can talk about that later, I guess. Glitch Interpreter, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. When Glitch Interpreter enters, if you control no face-down permanents, return Glitch Interpreter to its owner's hand and manifest dread. Whenever 1 or more colorless creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Drawing a card for your colorless, in need of interpretation creatures doing damage makes sense for an interpreter. I like that if Glitch Interpreter isn't needed right now, they'll just head back to your hand and manifest dread for you, returning only when there's something for them to look at. The reflection of the glitch's effect in the eyes of the interpreter works well here for potentially showing some adverse effects to their interpretation for themselves. Lovely horror lighting to emphasize the madness, well, the potential madness in their face. And another survivor that doesn't immediately make Duskmourn feel weak and cheap. So that's great. House Cartographer, 1 and a green for a 2/2. Human Scout Survivor. Survival at the beginning of your second main phase. If House Cartographer is tapped, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Mechanically, pretty great translation of a House Cartographer, requiring that he tap and head out, find you more land. The survivor's expression is definitely too carefree for my liking, but I do like Kai Carpenter's art here a lot, with the mist pouring down from the windows, illuminated by the light from within them, in turn illuminating the floorboards. The light looking excellent, balancing against that blue mist. Such a beautiful scene. Honestly, the exact same image with just the survivor looking a little bit less sure of themselves would work for me, but still fantastic. Most Valuable Slayer. I hope you like puns. There's quite a few in this set, actually. 3 and a red for a 2/4 Human Warrior. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Terrain had never lost a match in his life, and he didn't plan to start now. It's a common that buffs a creature when it attacks. I suppose that could feel like an effective sports player. Also a valuable player in that they're helping other creatures, I suppose. What matches is Terrain playing? Wearing like American football pads again whilst strangling a gremlin and threatening some other gremlins with another one of those desk lamp survivor weapons. Maybe it's a hockey stick, it's a prop, whatever it is. The lighting is excellently executed by Patrick Hell even, in this image. Yeah, again, another piece for perfectly conveying the exact emotion that it's intending to, which is of a capable survivor. I just don't like the intent to include so many of these types of survivors in the set. And also, just another case of where are you playing matches? It's just another one of these muddled cards which ask us to either believe that this person is playing matches of some sport that requires the clothes he's wearing on Duskmourn, which doesn't make any sense because you either have to be like hundreds of years old or there's like, safe zones that almost don't feel like Duskmourn, which isn't true. Or he's come from another plane, which just looks like Duskmourn, which is fine, but we've never seen another Magic plane before Duskmourn that even like vaguely resembles the 80s aesthetic of it. So it's just another head scratcher. Optimistic Scavenger. 1/1 Human Scout. Eerie, whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a +1 counter on target creature. A Void Rod? Perfect! Now I'll be able to get the glitch reader working again. I guess that's what that interpreter was using from a couple of cards ago. Flavor-wise, I think this is a perfect mechanical translation, as your scavenger is buffing your creatures with its scavenged tech whenever you pour over a new room looking for it. A Void Rod, it also makes the scavenging, I guess, a bit more coherent with the rest of the tech on the art, in that with this person sort of finding, like, big mechanically chunks rather than, like, glass and cutlery wires, etc. And I like that she's accomplishing her task without having to look vastly triumphant. She's not, like, super on the back foot either in this art. Just a sort of appropriate level of concern being applied, I suppose. I think we're running out, aren't we? Who have we got left? Reluctant Role Model, 1 and a white for a 2/2 Human Survivor. Survival at the beginning of your second main phase. If Reluctant Role Model is tapped, put a flying, lifelink, or +1 counter on it. Whenever Reluctant Role Model or another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on up to 1 target creature, doing a sort of Rayhan style effect. I think the flavor works quite well mechanically for a role model in that they are, what's the word? Extending themselves in some way to perform some sort of impressive feat in their first ability, and then their death will inspire others to perform the same or similar feats through their second ability. Pretty cool. Chris Morales' art here is masterfully executed. The quality of the lighting all throughout the room, the way the static of the window just reads so much like the lighting of a TV in a dully lit room, and the way that backlighting emphasizes our survivor's nonchalant expression. I just hate the look of the survivor. I hate his clothes and I hate his expression. I just don't like this character. I don't read him as a survivor. He looks too pampered. His clothes are too clean. His expression is too nonchalant. I just, yeah, another piece that sucks the horror away from Duskmourn for me. Even the, one of the other versions, there's a few other versions of this card. The version that features scarier art. One of those ones, I can't remember what they're actually called. There's a name for this type of card. But this version features a cellar spawn in the door. And I think at the very least, this makes his nonchalant pose look like it's going to cost him in some way. His nonchalance looks like accidentally not noticing the monster as opposed to just a projection of how we should feel about the mansion through his eyes. if you see what I mean. Now it feels like maybe that second ability is more relevant in the art. So maybe the Celespawn saved it in the background, but again, I just don't like this character. And I don't read them as real. When I see them, I can too readily see their construction, really. The thumb marks are all over them in a way that's not appealing. They've got a TV version, which looks even more like Sam from Mystic Studies. I don't mind it. I said like his expression is a bit more worried. But this art also, I'm not sure if it lends itself to the idea of a role model as well. He can't win with me, unfortunately. But who is he calling? The person he's inspiring. Savior of the Small, 3 and a white for a core survivor. That's a 3/4 with survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Savior of the Small is tapped, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. You're safe, kiddo, for at least the next 10 minutes. That's about all I can promise. It's a creature with a survival ability that returns creatures that are small from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, that works pretty well mechanically for the flavor. I love how cheesy the flavor text is as well. And as much as this card sort of exemplifies everything I don't like about the survivors, it nails the mood so perfectly that I am on board anyway. This can survive my culling of competent survivors as well, to be one of the exceptions that makes the rule. I love that they're a core. I love that we've got a core with the most 80s frizzy hair ever as well, tied back with your little yellow bandana. The shorts are so good. The pose, the lighting, it's leaning so much into cheesy hero tropes in a way that is just so well done. Yeah, brilliant little piece of flavour. Even if this is everything I don't like about Duskmourn, if you do it well enough, I can't help but praise it anyway. Similar to my feelings for Oblivious Bookworm. A green and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card unless a permanent enters the battlefield face down under your control this turn, or you turned a permanent face up this turn. Huh, the detector won't stop beeping. Must be on the fritz again. What is the flavour here? Your bookworm is drawing you a card by reading at your end step, but that knowledge is irrelevant and is thus you're discarding something, or it's only as relevant as other knowledge that you're also discarding because... is that the idea? Is it like sort of your information is being retained and utilized because your bookworm is less oblivious because something has shown up to alert him? Which is the permanent being turned face up or down? I'm not sure. Josh Newton's art here is amongst the best in the set for survivors, though. Yeah, this Harold Ramis-esque 80s nerd character. The lighting is sublime and just so exactly the posters of that era. Yeah, all these uncertain hands reaching out to them from the uncertain light behind him. Again, everything I dislike about survivors is in this image, except that now the oblivious nonchalance is intentional and designed to undermine our survivor, even if the text still looks a bit silly and the clothes are way too clean. But such masterful execution of the aesthetic cannot go unpraised. There's also another version which features an encroaching Celespawn snaking through this misty, ghostly void behind them to wrap their palm around his head. Maybe it's even more on the nose for the obliviousness, but it does lend to it in an even more comically goofy way. As about a millisecond after this image occurs, this bookworm will either realize his fate or meet a grisly end, or both. Shrewd Storyteller. 1 and a green and a white for a 3/3 human survivor. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Shrewd Storyteller is tapped, put a +1 counter on target creature. All his tales are cautionary. I like that your Shrewd Storyteller has to perform some sort of feat to regale to your other survivors and give them a +1 counter, basically. Definitely amongst my favourite survivor art in the set. I love the mood of this piece gathered around the fire. David Palumbo is excellent for drawing these pared down human scenes, and his painterly style is great for creating this rustic quality to them. Even. Such lovely muted colours versus so many of the other survivors. Excellent translation of flavour as well.
We can learn from another card that the symbol in the background of this image belongs to the benefactors, who are a group of survivors that help others by sharing knowledge and marking safe zones and materials to help others get by. One of the special guest cards, maybe I know what that means, to this set is Soul Warden, one of the classic Soul Sisters, now reimagined as a Duskmourn survivor. If you didn't know, it's a 1-mana 1/1 human cleric that has whenever another creature enters, you gain 1 life. It's very good. The group called the Benefactors offers what aid and protection it can to other survivors, marking precious safe zones with the sign of the flame. And we can see that sign behind her. The scene almost feels like she's asking us how the night was. Not in a sex way. I mean, like, we've just woken up on the bed across from her and she's like, how was it? Did she sleep good? Like, that's kind of the weird feeling I get from this image. Yeah, I mean, the relaxed pose works for the setting, I suppose. Given that this is supposed to be displaying a precious safe zone, and it makes the exception that they're rare, I don't really have a problem with the relaxed tone of this image. Although I don't have much to say about it. One thing I wish more cards did do, though, is focus more on these groups of survivors that the Planeswalker's Guide details. Because we also have the House Institute, who investigate and analyze the house and its monsters with the hope of defeating the house. And they like to dissect things in an operating room in the Flood Pits. They sound cool. And the Doorblades is another group of ruthless survivors who hunt and kill monsters and collaborate with the Institute. To that end, so it'd be fun to see these guys more. We can infer that other survivors might belong to one of those groups. But I do wish the groups got a bit of focus, given that the survivors are presented so handily anyway. If you're going to show survivors overcoming monsters, at least show me a Doorblade doing it, you know? And then we have Acrobatic Cheerleader. 1 and a white for a 2/2 human survivor. Survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Acrobatic Cheerleader is tapped, put a flying counter on it. This ability triggers only once. I used to cheat death every day in practice. This is nothing. I hate this card. I hate everything about it. Yeah. I think gaining flying temporarily would have felt a lot more like performing acrobatics than permanently flying. Like, what is the moment after this image, she just hangs in the air and just floats away. she's now achieved flight. Forever.
Let go your earthly tether.
So the flavor isn't even good. That doesn't feel like an acrobat to me. That feels like...
Enter the void.
Like, all I can imagine happening is, like, she finishes this jump and then she just keeps floating off towards the ceiling.
Empty and become wind.
The moment before this jump was the last time she ever touched the ground. Fucking stupid. Stupid mechanically. Whilst having shit art and just... this is, like, my least favorite card of the set. I don't even think it's well executed, honestly. Like, it's... The lighting is competently painted, but I don't like her pose. It's like really awkward. She's just like at an awkward angle. Like, I don't know where she came from in the image before this. What the fuck is... I can't read the image before this or after it. It's like one of those photos where people will take the mid-jump and the point of the photo is to look awkward and strange. This is how that feels. And she's just a jarring cheerleader. One of the most jarring outfits we've seen. The same problem applying again, where it's like, where were you fucking doing cheerleading? Where? On Duskmourn, on Earth, were you doing fucking cheerleading? I guess on some other plane of the millions we apparently have now off in the outside of everyone's view of just endless Americana, 80s American looking planes, apparently, is just the rest of the multiverse. If you wanted a card that was a cheerleader, this isn't even a good representation of that in flavor or art. The survivors, just on the whole, are just not shown as being in enough danger. They don't evoke the feeling of danger when, or just the sense that Duskmourn is a place to be scared of at all. Which is understandable, because that's the approach when creating a magic card, is you want to make something capable that not only can you believe being in a combat situation, as they might end up when you send them out into combat, etc., but they also need to appeal to you and look like a capable character that you want to get behind, you know? The cards need to depict a character that's competent enough for you to want to play with. This is how 99% of Magic cards are designed. That makes perfect sense that they've done it again here. But much like with the guide, as I pointed out, the Planeswalker's Guide, over-explaining everything, applying that typical logic that usually produces good results in Magic sets hasn't been effective here. Presenting so many survivors as so capable and so unperturbed by the house has served to dampen the setting of the house. If the survivors inside of it aren't feeling any fear, then why should I? It's just another example of a decision that was made in line with how it typically is, and not as an exception for Duskmourn, which should have been treated with a bit more exception, in my opinion. As you look through Duskmourn's cards and you repeatedly hit with survivor after survivor, where they're just having a ball, it's just another day at the office, at least. They're aimlessly wandering around a haunted house at a theme park. That's the feeling I get from these survivors. And when you so regularly get that feeling of these survivors, it doesn't create the image of this preyed upon group of survivors who struggling to get by and constantly on the back foot. It creates this idea that the house's monsters and them are on some sort of level playing field, basically. The fact that I'm even thinking of them as in this like conflict style relationship is incorrect. They're supposed to be prey. They're the prey of this house, a domain in which Valgavoth has almost absolute power.
It doesn't matter how all-encompassing you present Valgavoff's strength, or how you describe the monsters and house in the art or the story, it's all undermined by survivors that they can't lay a finger on. It's just, yeah, it's a shame. The triumphant, capable survivors should have been used far more in moderation. I just don't understand why that represents the majority of the survivors cards. Obviously, as I pointed out, there are a few that are on the back foot in some way, but they are not common. Yeah, we should have had a few triumphant survivors at higher rarities to imply scarcity, and then the majority of survivors at least shown to be struggling in some way. Having far more built mechanically around concepts like fear and cowardice, wanting to hide or flee, etc., that would have gone a lot further at maintaining the tone of the setting than what we got, which just serves to theme parkify Duskmourn through their nonchalant disinterest. And as this set demonstrated, and everyone already knows, creatures that evoke emotions outside of those which seem battle-worthy are admittedly rare, but they're fantastic. We love those creatures. Mother of Runes, Beast Whisperer, Birds of Paradise. Avacyn's Pilgrim, I'm using as an example, obviously because it comes from a horror world with a more consistently executed tone. Nothing about Avacyn's Pilgrim's mechanics create the idea that he should be afraid, but I love that his art invites us to follow his gaze behind him to the eerily lit moors and wonder if he is, as to whether he's being followed. The pilgrim's hurried pace conveys the danger of the moors, and his flavour quoting him is hopeful, but it's always read to me like a mantra said to calm oneself in a time when the angel he invokes was missing. We even love creatures where their mechanics undermine them in some way, or even present them as doomed. Like Hunted Witness or Hunted Ghoul. Innocent Bystander from the recent Murders at Karlov Manor did an excellent job of this. And even Unwilling Vessel from this same set. Norin the Wary was historically one of the cards that evoked his cowardice mechanically so well. And he was such an effective card that WotC actually brought the character back for Duskmourn. Norin, Swift Survivalist, is 1 red for a 2/1 legendary human coward. Norin can't block, and whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. You may play that card from exile this turn. I don't know what it was. Why would I stick around to find out? And so here's Norin back to present everything I want the survivors to look like, basically. Could he be any more wary or scared? He can't block because he's too afraid. And he gives all your creatures the power of fearful retreat from combat to be played from exile again. Excellent expression on Norin's face. Norin existed quite a while ago on Dominaria, but he also existed during the time of time portals, etc. So I imagine Norin accidentally time portals himself to Duskmourn at some point. And that's how he's here. There's one other survivor who sort of stands alone from the rest of the survivors, and that is Marina Vendrell, who costs Wooburg, 1 of each colour, for a 3/5 legendary human warlock. When she enters, reveal the top 7 cards of your library, put all enchantment cards from among them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Marina can tap and lock or unlock a door of target room you control, activate only as a sorcery. She's the new 5-colour enchantment commander, I guess. Cares about rooms as well, although she's just good in any 5-colour enchantment deck, really. Or just as the helm of any 5-colour enchantment deck. She's pretty cool, not a super exciting card. In the story, Marina was the teenager who found Valgavoff imprisoned in the basement of the house they just moved into, basically. And she was a loner and an outcast, etc. And Valgavoff befriended her in the dark of the basement and coerced her into bringing the girls that were bullying her down into the basement, at which point Valgavoff devoured them and then used the power he gained from them to expand the house. That first bit initially, and then further and further as he expanded further and was able to consume more people. So Marina sort of inadvertently caused the house to come about by enabling Valgavoff, essentially. And Valgavoff offered her a deal, in a way. And then this is also demonstrated with the character Winter at the end of the story. I like the implication that Valgavoff honors his debts in some way, and that's important to him. I think that's pretty cool. Basically, Marina sees the house as it always was supposed to be. You can see in the art, in Magali's art here, that the area around her is sort of much nicer looking than that outside, this aura around her. I guess the locker unlock door thing is sort of referencing referencing the fact that she has sort of free reign on the house. She's like the only person who doesn't experience the horrors of the house and only views things as they used to be, and just sort of wanders unperturbed through the halls. And then as she enters and you put all enchantment cards from the top of your library into your hand, I think it does a good job of her only seeing this version of reality. All she can do is pick out the enchantments from the top of your library, as that's all she can see.
And I'm in two minds about Marina. I really like her in the story. I like the story that we read as presented as part of her diary, and how she unwittingly caused Duskmourn to go about. I like her and her relationship with Algavoth. But I don't find the idea of Marina super compelling, that she's just living through, like, that one level from Bioshock 2 where you play as a little sister and you see what the world, how they see it as. Like, that's fine. It's not a super interesting idea. I also don't understand why she's immortal. I suppose this spell that Valgoth's given to her is, like, self-perpetuating, I'm assuming, allowing her to not age, as she still appears to be like a teenager, despite apparently living at least 100 or so years ago. Depending, well, I think the house, I can't remember exactly but how long the house has been supposed to be around, but it's quite a while, to the point where we have had generations. So the magic must be keeping Marina alive as well, which I don't really understand how that relates to the deal. It more just seems like she can be there when the Planeswalker characters show up, but it's fine. I also don't understand why she dresses like she's from hundreds of years before the rest of the styles in the set. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine if she's been around since before the house, but like, why did she, when it seems like the 80s-isms of Duskmourn came about pre-house, because the house only took a few years to expand anyway. Couldn't have been that much of a cultural shift. But Marina's just from another century. What the fuck is she wearing? I really don't like it. Excellent piece, obviously, by Magali. The story actually says that Marina is wearing antique clothes. It states that in the beginning. So her outfit is not fashionable, and she is a nerdy, outcast child at school. So I can totally see how she'd be wearing clothes that aren't in line with the rest of everyone else's fashion. But this is like showing up to school wearing 200-year-old clothes. It's nonsense. Where did you even get them? Where did you fucking find this? And it just muddles the time period of the house completely and makes it appear like Marina's an outlier. Teenagers don't dress like this on Duskmourn. This is Marina being a fucking weirdo, which is fine, but we have one opportunity to see a person preserved in time from the beginning of the house. This is the one person we get to see like that, outside of the Glitch Coast. So Marina's style is going to read as, whether intentional or not, emblematic of the styles that people wore right before the house expanded. And that only took a couple of years, not hundreds. I feel like you could have had her look weird and out there clothes-wise without making it look like she's from an entirely different time period. It's just another thing on the list of, like, little decisions that just weren't considered very effectively in the lead-up to this set. Honestly, props to Sienna Maguire, Mira Grant, for tying everything together so well with the story. Like, the story definitely has issues, and we can talk about that more in the next video. But yeah, even like throwing in that line at the beginning of the story, like, oh, Marina wore fucking antique dresses, like saving it a little bit, saving the logic of it just a little bit. I was going to talk about the returning heroes of Magic, their cards in this video, but I think that would make more sense to do alongside the story spotlight cards, so we can talk about the story as well. So we'll save that for a later chapter. Before this video is done, I want to talk about Glimmers as well, mostly because I have nowhere else to fit them in this series, and they're related to Survivors, so it makes sense to put them here. Glimmers, as I mentioned briefly, are benevolent manifestations of survivors' hopes and their will to survive. According to the guide, they can take the form of treasured childhood objects, fondly remembered pets, or even friends, but honestly, most of the time we see them as animals. You do see them in other forms as well, but 9 times out of 10, it's an animal. And let's look at their cards, shall we? We'll start with the Enduring cycle, probably the best Glimmers that we have. Enduring Courage, 2 red, for a 3/3 enchantment creature, Dog Glimmer. Whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. When Enduring Courage dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment, it's not a creature. All the Enduring cards have that second ability, which makes them particularly powerful, as they have an inherent recursion effect, and in the form that they come back, obviously they're not a creature anymore, but they're also more difficult to kill. So very good cards, all of them. This one is Ogre Battle Driver, which is an excellent, tasty good haste effect, and this one is even harder to remove than Ogre Battle Driver, even though I guess it's more targetable in its initial form, but you know what I mean. It's a cute dog Glimmer. All the Glimmers are where the cuteness comes in with Duskmourn, I suppose. And I suppose having a animal sidekick is sort of an 80s thing, maybe? Like pet movies? It's not really a horror thing, but you know what I mean. All the Glimmers are usually depicted as sort of glowing, often gold, striking against the dark backgrounds of the house. And this dog looks very hasty, so that's appropriate. Let's talk about all the Japanese alters for these at the end. Enduring Curiosity 2 and Blue for a 4/3 cat Glimmer. They're all enchantment creatures, by the way. It's got Flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. When Enduring Curiosity dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. It's not a creature. It's that blue effect again that showed up on Coastal Piracy and then a lot of cards since then, and is good. It's a good effect. This one recurs. Obviously, cats are curious, even if it kills them. And yeah, that makes sense for drawing cards, so Flavour achieved. I really like how Julie Dillion has painted the translucency of this cat with the stream of light cutting through it as he adorably obscures the book you were just reading, as cats are wont to do. But lovely colours on this blue card. Enduring Innocence. 1 and a white for a 2/1 sheep Glimmer with lifelink. Whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, like a welcoming vampire, etc. Enduring Innocence cares about small creatures, so that makes sense for Innocence. I do like the framing of this scene and the way the lamb is illuminating this misty bit. Yeah, there isn't much to say about the Glimmers, to be honest. They just all evoke a cute animal, effectively. Enduring Tenacity, 2 and a black for a 4/3 snake Glimmer. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life, and it has the recursion effect again. I suppose this is less of an exact Flavour translation with Enduring Tenacity, as you're making your opponents lose life. But I suppose it's like, you know, you're coming out ahead on top of them, so you're outlasting them, I suppose, which maybe could feel like Tenacity. Maybe my favourite illustration of all of them. With the cute snake, although I like that being the black card, this one is least interested in being cute. Although, if you find snakes cute, then this is a pretty cute snake. I love the cobwebby appearance of Isis's environment here. And those doors look particularly daunting. Enduring Vitality, 1 and a green for a 3/3. Elk Glimmer. Vigilance. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any colour. That's a thing I like to make Mia do a lot, so I like this card. Enduring Vitality, yeah, Vitality and sort of life channeled through green can often be represented as mana, so this doesn't feel unflavorful. As Glimmers appear to be of the house and thus, at least in the story as well, they seem a little bit more maybe untargeted by the house's monsters. I like how this elk Glimmer is happily prancing past the grasping claws of this tree folk, maybe. That foregrounded tree hand actually does a really good job of creating depth in this image. Oh, maybe this is my favourite one. I can't decide. This, Enduring Vitality and Enduring Tenacity. Hard to pick. One of those two. Really love the misty quality of the Hauntwoods in the background as well. And a few tiny eye fungus. Each of these, like the Overlords, had their own Japanese alternate promo card art thing. And they're all basically just a sort of more anime version of the thing they were depicting, with the cuteness turned up to 11. Look at this cute snake. Even cuter than the one we just looked at. Look at this adorable lamb. Could it be any more adorable? And the little cat with a little cloak on, who's summoning treats for you? I don't really know, but it's very cute. The dog is like a little thing now. I'm not really good at dog types. What? It's like a different type of dog now, like a little one, you know. And we have Bambi as well for Enduring Vitality. Just basically exactly Bambi, if you want. Yes. I feel like they look appropriately anime. I have nothing against them. They don't necessarily gel with the rest of the style of Duskmourn, but they are promo cards, so, you know, who cares? Inquisitive Glimmer, white and blue for a 2/3 Fox Glimmer. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Unlock costs you pay cost 1 less. Glimmers are physical manifestations of survivors' hope and courage. Their presence is one of the few things that can protect from Valgavoth's malevolent influence. So yeah, maybe I didn't need to explain Glimmers. I could have just waited until we got to Inquisitive Glimmer. That sort of motion warping from the Fox Glimmer in the foreground is lovely. I like that this Glimmer is comprised of 2 foxes, it seems. One is asleep. I do love how much motion is implied by this fox's tail. We can see the ripple in the water where it leapt off the water, it seems, a moment ago. Flavor-wise, the unlock cost, I suppose the enchantment spells as well, although it's more vague, but specifically the unlock costs, lending to the idea of you playing more rooms, thus exploring the house, does effectively convey the idea of an Inquisitive Glimmer. Lionheart Glimmer, 3 and a white for a 2/5 cat Glimmer with ward 2. And whenever you attack, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. The survivors would no longer be picked off one by one. It was their turn to hunt. Seems like a pretty effective Glimmer. If they can manifest as a lion, yeah, you need to have your childhood hopes be represented by powerful animals, it seems, was the best way to prepare for Duskmourn. I suppose it's just like a helpful Glimmer that helps the group, which is why it's buffing all of your creatures. Having a lion on your team, I suppose, would be quite effective rallying symbol. Tracy Hayes has done a lot of art in the set that I do like, and I don't dislike this piece, but it's just not the kind of mood I need in Duskmourn. I know that the Glimmers are supposed to provide this sort of feeling. I think the survivors could do with looking a bit more... I think the idea was to make them have them be resolute, but I think they look a bit listless almost. Yeah, I think having that sort of tenacity almost be more a feature of their expressions would have worked a bit better here. Soaring Lightbringer, 4 and a white for a 4/5 bird glimmer. Flying, other enchantment creatures you control have flying. Whenever you attack, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token that's tapped and attacking that player. Hope arrives on silent wings. Okay, that looks very much like Aminatou in the art. Yeah, that's definitely Aminatou. Okay, well... Actually, Aminatou didn't actually go into Duskmourn. And looking at it now, her card has the same issue, to be honest. So, this could be a premonition that she's having, I suppose, or something, but, like, it doesn't really make any sense for Aminatou to be depicted here, surrounded by glimmers, because that didn't happen. She didn't go into Duskmourn specifically because she was like, no, it would fucking suck for me. I've foreseen bad if I go there. So, nah, didn't happen, mate. Didn't happen, mate. Anyway, outside of nerdy nitpicking, but still, it's silly. This happens with almost every Magic set where there'll be inconsistencies between the cards and the story, which is absolutely fine. I mean, understandable, but, it's still annoying. I suppose this was in the Aminatou deck, that's my best guess. I like that the bird seems to have its own mastery over the house here as it's bursting through the ceiling, though. Unless Aminatou maybe can, like, manifest glimmers outside of Duskmourn, maybe. And this isn't actually on Duskmourn, although there's nothing really to indicate that it isn't Duskmourn, outside of Aminatou being there. Who knows? Confusing. Odd. Yeah, glimmers seem to be a product of Duskmourn, don't they? Flavor-wise, it does stuff with enchantment creatures. I can imagine a mega glimmer buffing your other glimmers, so fair enough. And making more. Is that the only glimmer token in the set? A few cards make this glimmer token. And it's a cute little hare, it looks like. Maybe like with the previous bird, this hare also demonstrates some mastery of over the house with the way it's hammering the floorboards up here with its paws. Or maybe this is just a card trying to show you how a 1/1 hare is capable of killing a 1/1 human. Lovely. I do like the Glimmers trails and how they create history of their movement, though, in the art. It's nice. But yeah, I like Glimmers as an idea, and I think in isolation, having these, like, bright, glowing manifestations of hope illuminating the dark corridors of Duskmourn would look really good, and be a good way to have that dwindling hope represented. But, when stacked on top of how the survivors are otherwise presented, it's like, do they even fucking need them? They seem to be doing fine on their own, who cares if the Glimmers are there? They are a cool idea, but they, on top of all the other visual muddling of Duskmourn, I feel like they sort of, unfortunately, contribute to the other things that I don't like. Even if taken away from how the survivors look on the, you know, as they are, I think that I would enjoy Glimmers more. If the survivors were contrasted against the Glimmers as being more practical, more muted colours, etc., then I think the Glimmers would stand out more. But, it's just another sort of neon colour bleeding into the neon, though, at the end of the day. Yes, that is my relatively negative overview of the badly designed survivors of Duskmourn. They really are pretty awful. And the degree to which they ruin the tone of the setting is a fucking pain, honestly. At the end of the day, the three things that get on my nerves the most are the brand new, untouched look of all the survivors' clothes, the garish and over-designed and not even particularly faithful to the era it's evoking tech, and the fact that barely any of the survivors look like they're in danger ever. They're all just so fucking capable, and it drives me mad, and it ruins the tone. It's funny, the thing that put me off so much before I went into Duskmourn, when we first saw the first few cards and art, etc., the 80s aesthetic was so abhorrently repellent to me. But it's funny how that ended up not really being the part of the survivors' look that is the most damning. Like, I think the 80s aesthetic looks out of place with, and makes strange implications for, the rest of the Magic multiverse. And ultimately, I don't want it in the Magic canon at all. But my reasons for that are primarily personal taste-based. And had the aesthetics of Duskmourn survivors been constructed with greater consideration, then regardless of how 80s or Stranger Things they looked, I would praise their effective execution. But that isn't the case. The execution is garish and unoriginal and contradictory to the logic and damaging to the tone of the setting. Like, you could have made an 80s aesthetic for Duskmourn that wasn't so obnoxious and derivative and shit, quite frankly. Like, it's crazy how many of the good elements of Duskmourn's
tone seem to come from individual decisions made by artists, and how many of its bad elements seem to come down from the style guide, honestly. And I don't know, this is all speculation, obviously, but most of the bad aesthetic choices are repeated. It's like they have some sort of similar origin or something. Bizarre. It's ultimately a shame, because even the Survivor cards with art and flavour that I like, or I think is well executed, all of it is mired with the bad aesthetic choices that bled down from their source in the World Guide. And as a result, even the best Survivors still kind of cheapen the plane a little bit. They are uniquely, abysmally bad, these Survivors, amongst the worst character designs in Magic's history. Not just in isolation, but within their own setting. They are so badly designed that they make the other parts of Duskmourn that are good feel like a fluke. Like, how could the same group of people design these two things? Ultimately, I really hope that if we return to Duskmourn, which I hope we do because I love this plane, regardless of how much they try and put me off with the Survivors. But ultimately, if we come back to Duskmourn, I just hope that we ditch the 80s style. Not even that! I just hope that we consider it better and present it with more consideration. And less fucking derivative garishness. But we're not done with Duskmourn, and don't let me let all the air out of its balloon just yet. There is so much more to love about the plane than Duskmourn's dreary and derivatively dressed dwellers would imply. In the next video, we will focus on the house itself, which, in my opinion, has some of the finest execution in the entire set.
Until then, all that's left to do is go to my bloody Patreon and become a bloody patron. Please and thank you, like all these beautiful people whomst I lavish with attention at the end of each video. My brass squire and parcel mere are cut of the finest cloth a mere can be constructed from. Admire that cloth, as you admire their names, as I am. But wait, I hear a sound, and it's the rumbling of mashed together metal bodies. Where the ball rolls, and what are the dark intentions of the mere that make it up? These remain mysteries to this day. All we know are their names.
Sebastian Rees, Storfeting, Marshall Mere, Eric Vaughan, Librarian of Leng, Steve-O, Santiago Adia, Chonga the Banished Mole King, Patrick Dane, Mimio, Bob, and Dark Flame. Thank you all my patrons, your help is so greatly appreciated and needed. And thank you all for making it to the end of the video. Your reward today is another random card from Scryfall. Today's secret code word special card is Jund Panorama. Get out of my house.